Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining FinTech North and GFT this morning for our latest webinar, which is all around creating real business value from AI. We know that AI and FinTech in the future of financial services is, massively of interest to the FinTech North community. We survey our community every year, and this always comes out, really high on the list of topics and interests for everybody at the minute. And it's you can't really be hosting a tech event and be part of a tech community without having it on your radar and talking about it. So we're really excited today to kind of really get stuck into it and not just be talking about the concepts, but be talking about some of those real use cases. So welcome. My name's Joe. I'm General Manager at FinTech North. Just before we get stuck into some of the content, I thought it'd be useful to just explain a little bit about who we are, the work that we do in the ecosystem, just give that background for people who've maybe not been to a FinTech North event before, who don't know too much about us and our community. So I'm just going to share my screen with you really quickly now, and hopefully you can see these slides on screen now. So please do reach out to us if you'd like to chat about our events, about working with us. info@fintechnorth.uk is the email address you need to reach out to there. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. So we're right across social media to sort of stay abreast of any developments with Northern FinTech and other events in our community. So as an organisation, FinTech North exists primarily to bring the Northern FinTech community together in places like Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Durham. We exist to support the development of the sector generally. Specifically, that means helping our entrepreneurs, our startups, our scale-ups with business opportunities, profile opportunities, connections, all of these things. We exist to make sure that the North, doesn't compete and actually collaborates wherever it can. And we are neutral in our support of the ecosystem. We don't promote any one city or geography as the capital of FinTech in the north of England or the capital of payments, for example. We try and promote the North equally as one region because we believe that means we can compete on an international stage. And finally, we make sure that all of the innovation, all of the development that's taking place in the North doesn't happen in silos, in isolation, but actually is part of a wider national landscape. And I'll come back to that in a second. All of that's quite a big picture, and I think this infographic really brings it together. Primarily, FinTech North is a face-to-face community of people who come together, network, build relationships, make connections, all of these things. And actually, it's really powerful to be able to do that virtually as well and reach not only the entire North, but the entire UK with a webinar such as this. Just before I move on, the key thing to mention here is that we are self-funded as an organisation. So if anybody's interested in supporting us in the work that we do, we'd really welcome that discussion. Because we rely on that kind of support to continue bringing our community together. Just quickly, always want to promote what's going on in the North, and I'll talk a little bit more about the UK as a whole in a second. But in the North of England, we see some real strength in FinTech. Probably got about 400 FinTech firms across the North of England, and the sector in the North generates about 2 billion every year for the UK economy, GVA. In Liverpool, we see a real strength in wealth tech and insurtech. In Greater Manchester, there's a real strength in payments and e-commerce. In the Leeds City region, which is where FinTech North was founded and started, we see a real strength in banking, lending, and regtech. And up in the Northeast, there's a real innovation corridor between Newcastle and Durham. The Northeast is really strong on payments as well. So just wanted to give you a little flavour of what's going on. These infographics that you see on screen, they're a visualization of each of those ecosystems that I've just described. They're produced by Whitecap Consulting, one of our parent companies at FinTech North. You can check those out on their website. They're completely publicly available, a great resource if you want to know exactly what's going on in each of those ecosystems. Just wanted to mention the kind of national side of things as well, and give a bit of a shout out to some of our UK partners as well. Back in 2019, alongside FinTech Scotland and Innovate Finance, we were a founding member of something called the FinTech National Network. This is a coordinating body with other FinTech hubs around the UK, and we get together twice a month, coordinated by Innovate Finance. We collaborate on campaigns, we amplify each other's reach. Wherever we can, we feed into government policy as a collective. And I just wanted to thank all of the National Network for their help promoting this webinar. Welcome to all of our attendees from across the UK. It's awesome to have you with us today. Something that the national network collectively was able to do was to feed into the Khalifa review, which was a review started in 2020, headed by Ron Khalifa, into the sort of state of UK fintech. The Khalifa review identified 10 national clusters, which largely reflect some of those hubs that I just had up on screen there. And obviously, for us in the north, we're looking at Leeds, Manchester as the Pennines, and Newcastle, Durham as an emerging cluster up in the northeast there. It's key to kind of highlight that the UK is a significant market player when it comes to fintech. We've got 10% of global market share, and the sector in the UK generates 11 billion every year for the UK economy. And I mentioned we had 400 fintech firms in the north. Well, the UK as a whole has about 2,500. So a really sizable ecosystem, and yeah, we're delighted to play a part in that. Just quickly on FinTech North, then, just coming back to our organisation this year. We, as part of our mission and our objectives, are working across 2 new areas this year, not just our events such as this, but we're also working across international trade, and we're also working to enhance the supply of skills into the sector, and I'll come on to some of those notes there. Just on the events front, we're soon to announce a new event for FinTech North. We're hosting a 2-day summit in York in October. So yeah, keep an eye out for that one when it's announced. We're going to try bring the entire North and indeed the UK together in one place. So yeah, keep an eye on your inboxes and our event page for that event. International trade, I mentioned that. We're just trying to bring more international trade missions into the north of England. We're trying to bring more northern companies overseas into other markets. And we want to make it really clear that we can help deliver some of this activity. And we've worked extensively with the Department for Business and Trade, the UK government's international trade arm, in the past on some of their fintech trade missions. And we want to continue doing that. But we also want to do this kind of stuff under our own steam as well. So I just wanted to highlight that that's something that we're working to achieve this year. And finally, skills. We're constantly hearing from employers that they're struggling to recruit people with the right skills into their businesses to fuel their growth. Similarly, we hear from people at the early stages of a fintech career who are struggling to get into the sector, asking us, where do I find the jobs? Where do I find the internships? What skills do I need? We've looked around ourselves in the ecosystem, and we've realized that we're right in the middle of this. We aren't a skills provider. We're not an academic institution, but we do know all of the key stakeholders who can kind of help positively impact this agenda. And we can use our ability to convene to kind of help provide a solution to this sector issue. So you'll see the types of organizations we want to engage with in the bottom left corner of the screen there: universities, education providers, employers, of course, accreditors, tech companies, fintechs, you name it. And some of the activity that we've planned and actually started to deliver, you can see on the bottom right-hand side there. We've actually set up a Northern FinTech steering committee to look at skills, and we've made sure that skills is front and center of our events this year at FinTech North. And going forward, we've got grand plans to potentially, start some kind of FinTech apprenticeship scheme right across the North and generally positively impact this agenda. So hopefully that's given our attendees today a flavour of who we are, what we're about. Big thanks to all of our partners right across the UK who've helped us to promote the webinar today as well. There's a real national collaborative success story there in fintech that I think it's important to highlight. So that's enough from me. I'm going to kind of facilitate the discussion later on, and I've got the team on the webinar with me, Ryan and Rachel, so they'll be putting messages in the chat. We've got some poll questions to ask you later on in the discussion once we're getting into our panel discussion, but do feel free to post some questions in the chat in the meantime, and our speakers will get to them. And yeah, it gives me great pleasure really to introduce our first speaker, and I think firstly say a huge thank you to GFT as one of our main partners for the year. It's been awesome working with the GFT team, and the ideal partners really provide so much fascinating content for our community to get stuck into. So without further ado, Alistair, if you wouldn't mind joining me on the virtual stage and taking the presentation from here, that'd be awesome.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate that intro. Great to be hearing about all the stuff that is going on in the north of the UK, a place very close to my heart. So great that we can be partnering with you today and more generally. So I'm going to be talking, and I have the privilege to be talking about creating real business value with AI. So my name is Alistair Gill. I'm a data scientist here at GFT in the UK. And let me just move on to the next slide and give you a little background to GFT for those who are not familiar. So we focus on digital transformation in mainly in financial services. We have around 12,000 people worldwide, and we are, I guess we like to think of ourselves as being big enough to deliver on some of the larger, more complex projects, but at the same time, not too big that our customers get lost, and we can ensure the success of those projects. So I guess the reason we're here is to think about AI and the benefits that it can hold for our businesses. Let's just take a step back to see where we are in the trends that are going on in financial services in the UK. So thanks to our partners at PAC for providing this overview and this underlying research. But I guess if we look at the things that are kind of maturing at the moment, that's things like core banking modernization and customer experience. And so these things are not going to really differentiate you in the marketplace. But if we look further to the left, we can see things like AI as a really growing area within the sector. And then further to the left still, we've got Gen AI. So that's emerging. So, still kind of in the early stages of growth, but can potentially contribute a great deal in future. So these are things that kind of in the early stages, in their infancy. They're not kind of adopted widely across all organizations, and so I think this is where there's a real opportunity to kind of investigate these and see where they can be relevant for your business or organization. And I guess what's driving this? Well, thanks to Google Cloud and our partners there for providing these couple of slides, which just kind of give a bit of an idea of what's driving that. So, the environmental situation and some of the challenges there in financial services are driving a desire to look for more efficiency. There's regulatory requirements, quite a lot complex. Those are increasingly putting a burden on organizations, and to be able to meet that burden, you need to kind of look outside just more people spending more time. There's a sense that other organizations are adopting these technologies. So, you want to maintain a competitive advantage and not be left behind. And then there's also a sense that people have higher expectations around what their experience is going to be like in terms of technologies and digital experience. In terms of the trends, there's 3 trends that are identified here on the slide on the right. I will actually move on to my next slide because I'm going to cover those in a bit more detail based on some of the research that I've done myself. And that research is based on some of the work by the Bank of England, the Information Commissioner's Office, the FCA, these large organizations that perform surveys every so often to try and understand the state of play in the UK financial sector and really understand what organizations are doing in AI and machine learning and what the areas are that they're particularly focused on. And I guess the reason that these surveys are kind of really beneficial is because this is really a competitive advantage for those organizations. So it's hard to really access this information, and in which case this is a way into kind of really seeing what the market's doing, seeing what competitors are doing, seeing what really seems to be kind of hot topics and beneficial around there, and to kind of perhaps steer your attention in terms of adopting these technologies. So there's hundreds of pages in these documents. I'm not going to suggest that you read them unless you really want to. What I have done is created a white paper which summarizes the main findings. So rather than being hundreds of pages, it's maybe about 20 pages. So you can download that for free. There's a QR code there. And I guess to just briefly summarize where these findings are at, what the main themes are that have emerged in the financial services industry. I mean, the adoption focuses really on three main areas. So there's areas of risk management. So these are opportunities to improve the predictions and the modeling using AI machine learning to predict credit, or it might be pricing, or even to identify things like fraud and prevention of that. There's also the, I guess, more general organizational or operational side of things. So how efficiencies can be made within that business. It might relate to trading strategy, but it could be also automating those repetitive tasks that that businesses have to do as part of their business as usual. There's also tying into this theme of higher expectations from users, there's enhancing customer experience and engagement. So it could be marketing, it could be personalized advice. And I guess one of the things that is worth just acknowledging and recognizing in these kinds of overviews or summaries or areas of application is that just because they're grouped here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same approach or the same technology that is used to solve these problems. So, for example, in terms of marketing, it could be churn prediction. So that's a predictive model. In terms of a user interface that's intelligent, that could be some kind of natural language processing or intelligent bot. So quite different technologies, but operating within the same part of the business. So that's the big picture. That's kind of what's going on out there. What we need to do is to look at what's relevant to your particular organization, and we need to really understand where AI can benefit you. So there's three strands that I'm going to outline, as well as talk about our approach. And I guess the first one is looking at the business processes, understanding what the business processes are, and it could be particularly decision making or managing or processing information where AI can be of particular value. The second strand or lens that you can look at the problem within your organization is in terms of data. So if there are large quantities of data that are difficult or impossible to process manually, or if that data is structured in some way and it's not been, technologies haven't been in place already to process it. It could be textual data, it could be image data, or it could be non-traditional sources. So all of these things are perhaps things you should be aware of in terms of identifying opportunities for AI. And then the third strand is task type. So there are algorithms that have that work in particular ways that are particularly well suited to solving types of problems like prediction and forecasting. That's taking pre-existing data or historical data and predicting something in the future. There's optimization, so that's having a large range or number of options and choosing the best from among them. So best being determined as what's going to be the most valuable for that particular business context. And then there's a detection task. So that's looking at large amounts of data and selecting ones that are unusual in some way. And it could relate to fraud, for example, or perhaps any circumstances where it's looking for that needle in the haystack. So those are, I guess, traditional machine learning approaches, but with Gen AI, there are things like text summarization, taking large quantities of written language and condensing them, as well as question and answer, which are types of tasks that we can look at for these technologies. So I think those are the ways that you look within your organization, and I guess the challenge is that we can end up endlessly identifying use cases. We can even take them off the shelf. There might be some that are they're published but are not necessarily useful to our organization. And what we don't want to do is be like butterfly collectors. So a century ago it was a very popular hobby where grown men or women would go around catching these butterflies and then preserving them and putting them in cabinets that they would store and display and look at because they're beautiful. But I think the challenge is, there can be lots of really interesting case studies, but they need to be useful to us. We don't want to just put them on a shelf like that and look at them because they're beautiful. We want them to make our businesses better or more efficient, or enhance the customer service, or whatever it might be. So they need to really have an impact and a value to our business. So our approach is kind of in an AI advisory capacity, is to certainly investigate what potential use cases are relevant to that business, as well as looking at the as is and the strategy for that business, and then creating a roadmap individually for that particular business of how they are going to go on the AI journey and achieve that value within their organization. So in terms of use case studies where we have delivered significant value to our clients, I'm just going to run through a few of them now. And the first one is looking at automated transaction monitoring. And so this is, if you think back to that example of looking for that needle in the haystack, it's monitoring suspicious behavior over billions of transactions. And so this uses a fairly standard and traditional machine learning anomaly detection algorithm, albeit optimized for this particular organization and this particular use case. But the real innovation here is that we have used and implemented natural language processing to be able to identify that decision making and layered it on top of the actual result. So that way there's transparency for audit and regulatory purposes, because there's a natural language explanation of why that transaction is suspicious. So this has removed a large amount of the manual workload, and it's also ensured coverage of the regulatory controls. So that was one large investment bank. Another large investment bank is one that we've worked on, this credit decisioning project. So I guess the reason this is especially exciting is because it uses large language models, so Gen AI technology that we developed and put into production even before the excitement 18 months ago with ChatGPT. So we were really developing this and getting value from it early on. And just to describe what it actually does and where it adds value, well, so for the credit decisioning process, there are lots of different data sources that need to be combined together to provide that holistic view of the kind of credit risk of an organization or on an individual. And so if you've worked with databases and trying to join tables within them, you'll know that the keys need to match exactly for those two tables to be joined, for that information to be kind of joined together. But in the real world, we know things are quite different, and you might think of an organization like Amazon. So it could be Amazon.com, it could be referred to as Amazon.co.uk, Amazon Sol. And we know that it's all Amazon, but if it's purely looking at the surface name or representation of that organization from these different data sources, then you wouldn't get a match. And so in the existing process, the previous process, it was very much error. Computer says no. We need someone to do this manually, and so that raised an exception. So it was up to 48 hours to manually kind of tie these pieces together. Well, if you think about a large organization going for a substantial loan, well, they have certain requirements. They want to get the options, they want to weigh up those options and make a decision. And often they found that by the time they got back to a credit decision within those 48 hours, their customer or potential customer had already gone somewhere else. So rather than it necessarily being reducing this matching time from 48 hours to almost instantly, it's a real benefit of being able to make an offer within real time that organization would be able to accept or maybe not. But I think it's the real benefit is reducing that or eliminating that opportunity cost. So other examples, so analytics compliance, monitoring. So this is a cloud-based surveillance implementation. So working closely with our partners at Google Cloud. So using a speech-to-text tool that was adapted and customized to handle encrypted traffic. So, within a financial services organization, there's some very sensitive information going around and being communicated in there. And so, the technology needs to respect that and be able to handle that requirement. So, as well as the substantial reductions in cost of the implementation, it also meant that this solution is compliant with emerging regulatory requirements. So these are things that are requirements that have been imposed on this particular area and continue to be. And so this was actually a couple of large investment banks where we've implemented that. So the two examples along the bottom, they are working with organizations that are already quite advanced in their machine learning and AI adoption, but we were able to help them enhance their processes. So the first one relates to model risk management. And so in highly regulated organizations and environments, you can't just this is a fundamental element of how they work. You can't just release a financial model out into the wild that's not been properly tested. It could have really severe impacts on the world financial markets, and nobody wants that. We've seen what happens in the past, and that's something that we don't want. So it's necessary, but actually it's time consuming, and the people that are required to do that need to be very skilled, but are also very short of time, and pulled in lots of different directions. So we were able to support them in their validation of models by using a large language model to support the documentation process. And so what was previously a bottleneck of these highly skilled and very busy people, we were able to open that up in the approval and the validation process. So the next example here of a case study relates to MLOps. So this was the infrastructure and the tooling that we've put in place for an organization to be able to work on their data science projects in a reproducible and a trackable way. So so they could adopt best practice, and we did this using Vertex AI from Google. And there are benefits here, such as a decreased time and cost for this model development. But one of the really valuable benefits that the organization kind of came back to us to kind of express their sort of gratitude for was helping them in terms of identifying the business processes for taking a model right from the early stages of development into production. So, it's things like the development of the model, the testing, the putting it, the deployment to production, as well as the monitoring and the BAU of it once it is in production. And so they found it really valuable to be able to identify those business processes and be able to adopt best practice for doing that. So just to kind of summarize this and bring it together in terms of our learnings and what we can kind of pass on to you at kind of a broad level of kind of recommendations for the success of these projects which lead to real value. And I think if you look at the diagram on the right, I kind of refer to it as kind of Stonehenge. Although I wouldn't want to be sat underneath that kind of pillar across the top, because it's not supported. It should be supported. But we've got this exciting kind of circle of jam. That's the really exciting thing, which is the AI. Everyone gets excited about that. Everyone wants to talk about that. But how do you really achieve value from that? And I think what we need to focus on, first of all, is achieving business value. How is the AI, achieving business value and satisfaction within the business? And so that means working really closely with the relevant stakeholders in the business to ensure that that's the case. On the left-hand side, we've got data and a performant data infrastructure or platform, which is vitally important. I've said data 3 times because it is that important. I mean, I think just to illustrate that, if I move to this architecture for a really exciting and innovative use of large language models. So, how they can be designed so that it can be used safely to provide, kind of the firewall and the governance around them in say a bank where they might need to interact with sensitive customer or financial data. So this is all well and good. It's great. It's very innovative. Everyone's excited. But hang on a minute. If there's no data there, if the infrastructure isn't there for the data, we're left with kind of a pretty picture. And you may as well add that next to the kind of the butterfly collection. So data is massively important. Having the infrastructure to be able to access the data, if possible, having differentiating sources of data that your business has and that can access over and above that that's available to others. All of these things are good. So moving on to the other pillar on the right-hand side. Well, this is relating to governance and model management. And really this is putting the procedures and the processes and the frameworks in place within your organization. So it's things like assessing model risks and model risk management, having the guardrails and policies there, and also considering the ethics. And these need to be wrapped together into something that functions across the whole life cycle of a model. So let me just put this as being like a golden thread that runs end to end within that process. So right from the early stages of coming up with an idea, for building, machine learning or AI model or solution, should we even be doing that? Is it ethical? Does it make sense? So right at the start, we need to be thinking about that. There's also selecting data sources, and fields within those data sources. Should we be using those? Testing the model. Does it show bias? We don't want it to show bias in particular ways, and so we need to test and validate for that. And then there's also putting that model out into production and the kind of monitoring of that model and ensuring that it's still behaving as it should do over time. So this is where this role of governance is massively important. And I think this role has, if anything, increased with the advent of Gen AI. And so just to kind of illustrate the kind of our approach to governance and the kind of the development of those frameworks, well, we've got various resources that we use relating to data quality, documentation standards for machine learning models, as well as the standards around those models themselves, as well as designs and architecture for MLOps. So, this is something that we are, really passionate about and believe is essential for anyone wanting to develop solutions and work in this space. So I hope that's been useful to you. I hope there's stimulated some kind of thoughts and ideas. And just to kind of summarize, please come and talk to us. If we can help, for example, by exploring AI opportunities. It might be those 2 pillars. So, data infrastructure, or it could be the governance and model management. We're able to help and advise in those areas. It could be the, designing a solution that uses exciting AI and ML technologies, but has an awareness and a realization and a knowledge, often through bitter experience of what the real capabilities and the risks are that are involved in those technologies. And it might be that you're further along in your journey, and we can provide expertise and AI advisory to you. So please do come and talk to us. I will just finish off with showing you this slide, kind of giving you an overview of the ADA marketplace that we have at GFT, which gives you a summary and an overview of the offerings that we have in the AI and the data space. So that's it from me. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And I believe James is going to be next from one of our partners at Google, who is going to be telling us about some of the really exciting and innovative technologies that they have, that they've been working on. And we've worked with them previously, and it's always a pleasure to work with them and to find out more about what they are doing at the moment. So James, without further ado, I hand it over to you.
Right, Alistair, thank you very much indeed. And just before I lose you, I assume that you can see my slides and you can hear me okay.
Perfectly.
Great stuff. So good morning, everybody. By way of introduction, my name is James Lowe. I'm the partner manager at Google Cloud. And as Alistair said, there's a rich heritage between the two organizations of GFT and Google Cloud in terms of our AI credentials. And I think if you go back to 2016, when Sundar Pichai, our CIO, announced that we were going to be an AI-first organization, and then following on that, in 2017, we created the transformer model, which is actually the model that underpins all large language models when it comes to Gen AI in today's market. And coincidentally is really the T in Chat GPT. It really points to the fact that we have this rich heritage, and I think given the decade or so of research and innovation investment that Google has made into AI and Gen AI to the financial services industry, I think it puts me in a position where we can create truly personalized human-like interactions and turbocharge employee productivity, automate complex back office tasks. And we believe that AI and Gen AI can really help unlock and create real business value within the banking and financial industry. So over the next 10 minutes, I plan to share with you what Google believes are some of the key market challenges, our strategy for addressing those challenges, and a couple of our examples of where we're seeing successful delivery of our solutions in the marketplace. And then maybe, if I've got time, a couple of other areas where we're seeing some rapid prototyping within our own organization to bring innovation to the finance sector. So let's dive into it. I think we can all agree in the next, when it comes down to market forces, every industry is undergoing challenging economic conditions, and banking is no different. I think the price to book ratio of these financial institutions is under serious pressure, which is causing banks to look at new business models. As Alistair touched on, when it comes to regulatory compliance, we're seeing or estimating a 60% increase in costs, and a scary factor that sort of blew me away when I looked at this was that we are seeing a new compliance or standard being produced every 6 minutes, and how banks can deal with that it blows my mind, to be honest. And then maybe a more fascinating thing is that there is a heightened expectation from all of us as consumers that we want to deal with our banks in a digital way. And again, another interesting stat is that since 2013, forecasting to the end of 2016, we're expecting to see globally 74,000 branches close. It just shows the way that the business models are having to adapt to deal with the difference in the way that we want to deal with our banks. So if I move on to the next slide, given that these consumer and industry dynamics are out there, we propose that banks are focused on 3 strategic key priorities. And Google's strategy in AI and generative AI solutions in banking are built around these priorities. So the first, driving growth through personalization and transforming distribution. We're expecting 75% of our customers or banks' customers will likely rebuy from banks that personalize their offers. So as embedded finance and open banking continue to grow, banks are increasingly focused on harnessing the value and the value of their data, so that they provide a personalized you-know-me experience in the way that they connect with their buyers and their customers. And AI accelerates the build and the deployment of these capabilities. whilst also expanding the talent pool who can work on these. So the democratization of AI and the services that come with it is only helping banks expand the pool of people that can work on it. The second priority is streamlining and automating the middle and back office operations. And given the downward pressure that we see from on profitability across the industry, banks are looking to get into the opportunities that are out there, using embedded finance, looking at the core modernization of platforms. And really, with the increase in the number of features that we as consumers are expecting to see going through the roof, they refer to a 3x expectation here. The way that AI and Gen AI can help address this sudden increase or appetite to have more features, more applications being available, will help the productivity of the operations employees within the bank. And then lastly, the improvement of operational and financial risk management. Alistair touched on it. I won't drone it again, but there is a significantly greater complexity that we see around regulation, risk management, and again, AI, generative AI is a powerful lever that can change the equation in terms of how much time and cost is spent on this. In addition to AI really being able to organize and analyze the data for risk management professionals and help them accelerate their work. I think this plays to Google's overall mission of, and it's a bit grandiose, but organizing the world's data and making it accessible to all. Our AI tools and our Gen AI tools are in place to do that. So if I move on to the next slide, just a very quick touch on the specific value of Gen AI when it comes to banking and the value that it can bring. Because I think personally, I've seen almost the biggest inflection point in my life working in the IT industry. Cloud was significant back in 2010, 2011, but AI and Gen AI has really been a wow moment for me. And when it comes to banking, we see that the value that I alluded to earlier is in the region of up to $340 billion. And should that be the case, we're expecting to see productivity gains and I suppose central to the 340 billion, the productivity gains we're expecting to see from customer service, from marketing, from software engineering and research and development will all help us achieve that. And some of those I'll touch on shortly. So, given the significant investment that we've seen in that we believe, given the significant investment that we believe and the value that we believe that we're driven by AI and Gen AI in the finance sector, Google has invested in its solutions in the 3 pillars that I discussed earlier. And furthermore, based on the Google's deep understanding of the financial services industry across the board and the work with the customers that we're already doing, we've delivered some really compelling solutions already, in addition to the ones that you heard from GFT earlier. Very much complementary solutions, and in terms of the marketplaces that we have available, they're also available out there today. So, for example, in the drive for growth and personalization, we've done a significant amount of work around conversational banking, and there will be a demonstration to follow this on a chatbot or a Gen AI assisted banking solution that GFT have produced. But the conversational banking solutions enables banks to build new data and conversational powered experiences with their customers and prospects to ensure that the financial products that they have available can be cross-sold, upsold, and can ultimately lead to new and deeper customer relationships, and specifically the top line growth that I alluded to earlier. We see our AI models also helping with the creative development and personalization that I referred to earlier. And our models will help identify the most valuable customers to banks, work out what their behavior is like, target them in new ways, and enable the creative teams to very quickly create assets that they can put in front of these new customers, given the way that they behave, save the creative team's time and ultimately save time for reinvestment of the costs associated with that saving in time. Under the streamline and automation of the middle and back office operations, our customer service automation solution empowers contact center agents through smart actions and recommendations and manages the contact directly through a conversational experience, again, increasing efficiency and cutting contact response times. We have a finance document intelligence solution that will make use of our Gen AI tools and our Doc AI platform that can easily extract and classify split documents, taking unstructured data, converting it into structured data, and then making it searchable so that we can produce and analyze, get richer insights into a much more efficient and accurate way. And then lastly, from an improving the operational financial risk management perspective, we have financial crime detection solutions that enables banks to use the power of AI to help globally detect money laundering risks and effectively and efficiently improve the fraud detection rate. Our AML and AI product is one of the most exciting tools that I've come across, and it comes on the back of years of working with some of our most strategic clients and then taking what we've learned to market. So again, an interesting place to go. And then lastly, we could take the regulatory compliance companion, which is a bit of a mouthful. This product helps developer teams at banks harness Gen AI to drive automation and improvements in how they translate changes in the regulatory and business requirements into policy and code updates. And again, it saves a significant amount of time when you try to implement those changes at scale. The processes that do that are very, very complex and entirely manual today, so it represents a huge opportunity for AI and Gen AI. All of the things that I've talked about on this slide and the solutions I've talked about are underpinned by Google's Gen AI platform, Vertex AI, and again, Asda, GFT, and my colleagues in Google will happily talk to anybody that wants to know more. So just to finish and check that I'm on time, there are a number of clients that today have already embarked on this journey with us. And I think if I just touch on a couple of them whilst I have a moment of time. Firstly, we've got Moody's, who you will all know well. In its simplest terms, Moody is giving LLMs to its employees with the relevant training data to enable analysis that used to take a full day to now be done in under 5 minutes. I suppose the secret sauce here is that you're putting Google's LLMs with Moody's unique analytical expertise. And when you put the two of them together, you've got professionals who understand the marketplace. You've got finely tuned financial large language models. And that enables customers to perform deeper analysis of reports, bank employees to understand disclosures better. And for example, customers can interrogate, analyze, and draw decision-ready insight directly from these financial disclosures that I've referred to. Another example is Commerce Bank, and Commerce Bank have been more interested in producing a chatbot. So within Commerce Bank, we produced within 9 weeks a reliable chatbot. It used our conversational AI platform called Dialogflow. The chatbot was called Ben A, and within the 9 weeks, it was able to respond appropriately to 250 different customer requests. Those requests were common questions relating to online banking, changes of address, your bank account, your cards, transactions. And so a very clear example of how some of our technology can help drive efficiency within the banking industry. And then 30 seconds on something that I'm seeing a lot more of within the four walls of Google and our customers is that there's a real drive for innovation. So our customer engineers within Google are incredibly keen on bringing innovation to our clients, and so are creating, using our Gen AI tools, a number of prototypes, and those prototypes are available to any banking, any financial institutions where they are relevant, and we're happy to come and show you them. Those prototypes and those demos are around 3 areas. One is generating company briefings, huge amount of information around company reports. Sometimes there you've got the Fed announcements, and really bringing in information for investment bankers to take tailored reports to their clients. So absolutely something there that we can look at. And then the last one is audio sentiment analysis from systematic trading. So real-time financial audio sentiment analysis from systematic trading signals, historical financial audio transcription, earnings calls, Fed announcements, etc., can all be wrapped into a report that can be produced within minutes using our Gen AI portfolio. So on that note, Alistair, I think I'm about done. I will hand back to you and let you take it from there.
Thanks, James. It's great to learn about what Google has been working on in this space with various clients. I think now it is time to turn to Paco. I believe you just mentioned briefly about the collaboration between Google Cloud and Thought Machine. And so, Paco, you're going to walk us through what we've developed. So I will hand over to you without further ado.
Thank you, Alistair. And hi, everyone. So my name is Paco Morandeira. I'm a Client Solutions Director in GFT, and I'm focused on financial services and retail banking. I'm going to show you a demo of our intelligent banking assistant, which we have developed in collaboration with Google Cloud, as James and Alistair referred to earlier, and which will hopefully bring to light a lot of the use cases that we've mentioned before relating to enhancing customer experience and also improving streamlining the operation and reducing operational cost. So a few properties of this intelligent assistant. As you might have guessed already, it uses generative AI, and we use the latest large language models that are available in the Vertex AI suite within Google Cloud. And that allows us to create a conversational engagement with clients. So looking forward to new ways of engaging and to growing expectation from customer to interact in different ways compared to a traditional app or a traditional AI-based chatbot. And as James also touched on earlier, it's about personalization and making sure it's not just a generic knowledge base or external or internal to the bank that the customer can navigate, but it's actually personalized and they can navigate their own finances and it sort of talks to their own personal circumstances. And it's also real time and integrated to an actual backend and banking system. And of course, as again, Alistair alluded to, you need to have the guardrails in place. You cannot just let the LLMs loose and interact with customers directly. And we'll show a bit of how we achieve that in a moment. So what this allows us to deliver is, again, a more efficient customer service operation, which is top of mind for many of the CIOs and COOs, as we saw earlier as well in the statistics. And by being more efficient, we will let customer service agents focus less on routine tasks and more on value-added tasks, which will in turn improve the customer experience. And again, through this conversational way of interacting, we will create more engagement and a better experience for customers. So how do we achieve this? Of course, we use LLMs, the technology behind generative AI, and what LLMs have brought into the application development space is mostly the ability to decode natural language into machine instructions, and also to turn the data from the response from those machines into natural language, and all of that by using a vast and general and mostly accurate knowledge base. But of course, this is a heavily regulated environment, and there are some risks and challenges to the application of generative AI in the direct interaction with the client, such as how to make sure it's safe. So we've seen how some malicious actors have managed to get LLM chatbots to provide a response that is harmful for the user or for the company they work for. Also, how do we make it private, making sure that customers' information is not shared with any third parties, and that customers can only see their own data and not anyone else's data. How to make it accurate, because LLMs are great at many things, but they are not as good at maths, and they can tend to hallucinate. And also how to make it useful, which goes back to the personalization and making sure that it talks to the customer's own circumstances and products. So how do we solve all of these challenges? So our solution implements a dual LLM pattern, which I think Alistair alluded to before, which is basically decoupling the management of the request, the interaction with the backend systems, and the management of the response. So we create some kind of firewall between the two, and we don't just let LLMs respond directly to the customer. So what it looks like in practice is the customer would interact with the user interface, and for the purpose of this demo, we've built a relatively basic web chat, but this could be integrated to any customer engagement channels that the bank has. It could even be a WhatsApp or even a voice assistant in the future. And then there's an orchestration layer that is basically responsible from decoupling the decoder and encoder side of the LLMs, with the untrusted decoder LLMs handling the request and understanding the customer's intent and the type of query they want to do, and then translating that into a machine instructions and a parameters for API calls that then go to the backend systems. In this case, we've integrated with also our good partners of Thought Machine, and this could be integrated to any other third parties or systems within the banking ecosystem. And in some cases we integrate directly. In some cases we just pull data into a data storage, again using across the piece a lot of the Google Cloud services for application development and for data storage. And then once the response from the systems is received, the orchestration layer would perform all the calculations, so we don't let the LLMs do things like adding up numbers or performing complex calculations. And then the trusted encoder LLMs are responsible for translating that data returned from the APIs and the orchestration into a human readable response that is sent back to the customer on the user interface. So let's see it in action now. So we start with the customer signing in. So again, going back to the privacy to make sure that they can only access their own data and not anyone else's. We have some suggested prompts to get the conversation started, and we can start with some basic interactions to just show that the agent is able to retrieve real-time the data from the core banking system, which is what you're seeing now on the screen. This is Thought Machine's dashboard, where you can see the balance matches what the customer is retrieving. And then again, more basic interactions just to pull out a list of transactions. We don't need to quote the exact account number. We just say current account, and the assistant is able to figure out which account it is. And then it retrieves the list of transactions, but also the encoder LLM turns that into a nice summary of the data that is being retrieved. And then we also enable follow-up questions where you don't need to repeat the whole question. The agent figures out that you're talking about a previous question that was asked on transactions. So you just retrieve those on coffee shops, and we see how it can successfully apply filtering based on translating those natural language requests into API instructions. Now, back to the privacy point, we don't allow to access anyone else's account. So this is an account that belongs to a different customer to the customer that is logged in. So we don't allow we tell the customer that account cannot be retrieved for them. Now moving into more complex kind of interactions, we can show a summary. So the agent is interpreting the intent to summarize data across a period of time, and it can return back a nice summary of categories and spend across different types of data. Now we see how it can also filter by categories, and in this case, it uses the natural language, the knowledge base to understand that restaurants and bars correspond to eating places or drinking places, which are not exact match of categories, but it can figure out what categories the customer is referring to. And also we can leverage the large number of languages embedded within the Google Cloud LLMs. So we can ask questions in different languages without the need of any additional development. It will understand the question in the same way, and it can actually even return the same summary in the same language. And also we can create meaningful comparisons as well between different months, between different categories, and so on. And it also figures out, we're talking about December last year and January this year without having to actually specify the dates. And then again, some useful comparisons and filtering combined in the same question with different data formats. And the agent is still able to figure out what the exact API call that needs to be made to the backend to retrieve the same information. And yeah, again, another example of a interesting comparison that could be done with the agent. So we can filter by category, dates, all kinds of values, amounts that are available in the backend system. And now another demonstration of safeguards. So we only let the LLMs answer to the questions that are in the scope of the agent. So if the customer is asking something outside or trying to create some harmful result, we just decline to answer. We just refer them back to the original instructions. Now moving into another kind of use case around navigating the bank's products. So we could also use this interface to let customers understand what products the bank offer, in this case, savings accounts, and it would retrieve again from the systems what are the existing available products, and in this case, using Thought Machine's simulation API, we can retrieve an actual simulation of how the products will behave and create some meaningful comparison so the customer can decide based on their circumstances what is the product that will benefit them more in terms of giving them the most savings over a period of time. And then we could let customers interact in a conversational way with that. So, for example, customers can say, I want to deposit a fixed amount every month. What would it look like if I do that? So again, allowing customers to change the different parameters of the request so they can get a different response based on their circumstances. And it could also use the history of spending from the customer to retrieve this kind of comparison. And also you can obviously apply filters, and if a bank has a large number of products, then they can filter by different characteristics and get a good idea of what products the bank offers. So this is the end of the demo for now, and yeah, we've shown the basic use cases of retrieving information and performing complex queries to understand and navigate the accounts and expenditure of the client. We've also shown how clients can use this to navigate products and simulate those products. And of course, there's a whole range of new use cases that could be implemented on the back of this around taking actions like making payments, blocking cards, opening accounts that could be easily implemented on top of this without the need of developing a more complex application or a more complex traditional AI-based chatbot. So hope you have enjoyed the demo, and as we said, please feel free to reach out for any questions or if you want to see it in real life. And I'm going to hand back over to Joe for the panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paco. I could hold you here for probably another hour and continue chatting about this tool, but really innovative, really transformational. But want to keep things moving, and we've got a panel discussion now. So thank you to Paco for that demo there, and to all of our speakers so far. We'll be inviting Alistair and James back onto the virtual stage in a second. Just before I introduce our panel, I just want to ask the FinTech North team to launch a poll for our attendees. We've had lots of questions in the Q&A, so keep those coming, please. But it would be worth asking you where you're all at, in terms of your organization or your AI journey, and try and get a little bit of insight from you there. So please do vote in that poll whilst we're having this panel discussion, we can get stuck into some of that data shortly. So if I can ask James, Alistair to come back up on stage, and Ines, actually, if you can be our first speaker, please. If you can turn your camera on, join us on stage, and introduce yourself, please. We've not heard from you yet, so yeah, please tell us about your role. Obviously, your organisation HSBC, well known to our community and all of the FinTech and FS community. But let's have an introduction from you first, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Joe. So hello, everyone. I'm Ines, and I currently work at HSBC as an AI strategy manager. I joined the company over a couple of years ago, and at the time we were already having a look at generative AI. That was before ChatGPT, actually. So we're trying already to understand a little bit the potential of this technology, how it worked. And then when ChatGPT exploded and blew up the internet as well, we obviously went on a very big education program, I'd say, to make sure we raised awareness properly about it, to make sure that people understood as well what AI can do and generative AI can do, the differences, what they shouldn't expect from it as well. We've also been helping prepare the processes and the governance because that was, a brand new thing, brand new fields, and most of the processes that were in place for more traditional AI didn't necessarily fit the need of generative AI. So had been helping a bit on that as well, and also advising people on use cases, how to shape experiments, how to get started with an AI project. And especially with generative AI, you might think that you can just put everything in one prompt and that will be enough. But sometimes you really have to think of the steps as well. How do you decompose what you want to do? And yeah, maybe what you need to do can be all done by generative AI, but not all at once. So a lot of very interesting stuff as well happening in the bank. I think that's it for me. So thanks for again, Joe.
Awesome, Ines. Thank you very much. No, that's a great introduction and plenty of food for thought. So we've got some questions to ask, and of course we've had some awesome questions from our community already. I can see some of you have been answering those questions. I always think the best panel discussions, the chair is very much a kind of small player and plays a small part. I want you guys to interact with each other and pick up on each other's points and agree or respectfully disagree with each other. And I'll try and keep out of it as much as I can. So yeah, our first question that I wanted to ask then was, with regards to generative AI, we're continuing to see lots of technical announcements and, amazing advances, but I suppose relatively few credible stories of business impacts. I know obviously we've seen some of that today, but why do you think that is? Will it come and how can we make that happen?
I'm happy to give it a go first.
Yeah, these questions are for all of you to kind of discuss amongst yourselves, so please jump in.
So I think maybe the lack of a success story, as you're mentioning, might be domain specific as well, because I've heard of a lot of other industries that are already using generative AI. Well, not always smoothly, but they are doing it, putting it in front of customers. But when it comes to financial services, obviously we are a heavily regulated type of industry all around the world. We have a reputation to maintain as well, and obviously customers to serve, customers to protect, and all in all implies that we have to be sure about the kind of product we'll deliver, to be sure about the impact, make sure to minimize the harm, and all of this cannot be done overnight, which is why we're taking the time just to make sure we'll get what is needed properly and perfectly.
I was going to say, I think that's exactly the case, Ines. I think we're still in early days of these technologies. It's still maturing. I mean, one of the questions I answered it and it disappeared from my chat, but it was about how do you know if something works or is good enough? I don't remember the exact wording, but that's something that is at the moment being we're trying to figure it out, because I mean we can take a lot of the approaches and the frameworks and the way that we've done things with traditional AI and machine learning, but so we're not starting from scratch, but it's a slightly different beast that we're working with now, and so those approaches need to be adapted in a way that's suitable for these kind of generative AI solutions. I mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you don't need data. The kind of I guess the foundational pillars that I talked about in terms of governance, that's vitally important, if not more so now. Data is also important, but then there's also that element of working with the business to establish, we can generate lots of text, but what's the useful text for that particular part of the business? So I think it's we wait and see, but I think it's not as though it's not on people's agenda or radars to work in the space, but it's just it's maturing, I think, is probably the best way of putting it.
Alistair, do you feel, and I think the reason I'm saying this is that I see a lot of organizations when being asked to consider Gen AI, because it's the new thing on the street, they're coming up with a huge number of use cases, some of which, just because they're done in a certain way today, could be done in a different way using Gen AI or using AI. But actually there's no real value. So I almost feel that there's been too much hype without some real thought around the use cases that are going to really be affected by Gen AI and the use of AI in general. So sometimes I think organizations just need to be a bit clearer in their own mind on what they want to use this technology for. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I was on a call with some of your colleagues, I think it was last week, and that was exactly the point in terms of, let's talk in terms of kind of cars. You don't want to go straight to a high performance sports car if you can achieve the same thing, using a small kind of hatchback that kind of runs around the town. You don't need to go through the expense. You don't need to go through the specialist skills that you need to kind of maintain it. There's kind of a progression of going from more sort of more simple, more easily implemented, more easily understood, to more complex and more costly. But you don't want you want to stay as far to the simple and less expensive as possible. You don't want to go jump straight in at the deep end. I think that's, and like you say, the hype has pushed people more towards the kind of the deep end, and we just want to kind of rein people in and say, look, actually, where the value is going to be is doing it this way, in a way that's predictable, in a way that is well understood, in the way that's actually going to be the most cost effective and deliver the best value. I think that's what I'd say.
Absolutely. I feel like quite often it falls back to what is your business problem and what question are you actually trying to answer. And sometimes people are not always happy to hear that Gen AI is not the way, because the press and the media have made such a big thing about it that obviously everyone wants to try, or almost everyone. I feel like there is a bit of a feeling of fear still among some people. I have had a conversation with people who had never even tried ChatGPT on their phone over a year after it had been released as well, just because they weren't sure what to do with it. So there's a whole bunch of mixed feelings, of feelings around Gen AI.
So thinking about that, do you as a collective panel, do you have any sort of tips from, for creating that value from AI, including measurement, even if it is a mindset thing that you're trying to overcome?
I think, as we were mentioning it, and Alistair touched on that as well, is about, first, what are you really trying to do? Is it just for the, do you just want to use Gen AI because everyone talks about Gen AI and everyone tells you that Gen AI is the next big thing, so you feel that pressure of having to employ generative AI? So first of all, understanding what you're doing, maybe using design thinking techniques as well to fully understand your customers, whether they're internal customers or actual clients of your company as well, what they truly need, and what would actually help them as well, would be a very good start. Between choosing maybe between more traditional AI and generative AI, that would be a good way to start. Having a look at the regulations as well, because it is always evolving. We've had the EU Act passing not that long ago, and same in the UK, and I'm sure that will change too. So I say starting with these two things, but most of all, what are the actual needs of the customers and what is your business problem?
I think to add to that, I would also, and we mentioned earlier, learn from other industries. Some of the advertising media organizations that we work with have adopted some of the AI, Gen AI creative facilities or functions of the suite of products that we've got in really fascinating ways. And I always encourage organizations that maybe are not steeped in that industry to look inside and see what they've done. So I think that's another thing that organizations could do more of.
I think, yeah, I totally agree with what's been said already. I guess if you're wanting to get value out of something, I think you need to be able to kind of measure the cost of what you're doing already, and have a baseline that, that identifies where amongst the different areas within the business where there is kind of value to be gained from kind of automating it or using AI or whatever it might be. I think without having that sort of clarity, it goes back to the use cases, what the use cases are, how it's done already, and where the pain points are, where the costs are associated with that, and then kind of a measurement of that. It's then that you can kind of start to achieve value and be able to demonstrate that you've achieved it.
And something as well that James was mentioning about looking at other industries, but we can also look at what's already being done for traditional AI and machine learning. There are a lot of frameworks out there to help you carry a machine learning projects, and most of the steps could be applied and used for a generative AI topic or slightly tweak. So I know there is the KDD, I think KDD1 or CRISP DM. I mean, if you look data science framework on Google, you'll find quite a few of them, including industry standards. So having a look there as well and reusing what's already available is also a good way to get started.
Yeah, I think we don't want to just throw away everything that we've learned because it's exciting and we think it's magic. I think that's totally the wrong thing to do. I think it is, to apply what we've learned already and the knowledge that we have, and the frameworks and processes we have. And, they might need modifying slightly or adapting, but that's part of that maturing that we're on the journey of doing.
That's the same for the measure of success as well. They exist already from more traditional AI. So you can have a look at this and also have a look at what would be the measure of success that makes sense for your project as well. There is no straight or single answer for that.
Thinking about our audience today, I think we'll share the results of our poll in a second. But one of the questions we're asking there is where people are at in their journey. How much are they using it? For those people who are maybe at the start of that journey, where should they start? How do you see they should? What are your recommendations for starting that journey? I suppose how do you get started with AI?
I would say it starts with data. What data, even with the unless you're just planning on using the generative AI models like ChatGPT or Gemini just out of the box and not change much from it. If you want to incorporate your own data, this is where you need to get started. See what's available, what's the quality of your data, especially free text data. So data that's a human entered can be quite tricky to deal with. Especially if maybe you're reusing legacy systems and you've merged new systems together, there will be gaps, information missing, inconsistencies. So really starting with the data, first, what problem do you have? Again, what it is that you need. You can do this using design thinking, and then what data is available, and also is your data good enough to be used for an AI project?
Ines, as a practitioner, do you see data gravity, i.e. the location of that data, as a key consideration as well?
I could be. It could sometimes be maybe easier if you have your data stored on the same cloud platforms, depending on the type of industry. But I feel like in HSBC, the location of data would only have an impact related to data regulations and what data you can send from a country or even from a department. That would be the main problem in a big bank, I would say. Which data can you access and which one can you not have? And that's where synthetic data would be quite helpful in the future as well.
Awesome. We've got about 10 minutes left till we're sort of scheduled to finish the webinar now. So I'm going to ask the team to share the results of the poll just with our audience, with our speakers. And whilst that's up on screen, so I'll let our speakers kind of have a look at some of those answers now. We've had a few more questions come into the chat as well. So thanks to all of our audience for being so engaged. We had an anonymous question saying, are we at risk of people becoming self-proclaimed experts and executing big decisions? How can we get AI to learn more context rather than just answering the question asked and not giving consequences? We had a question from Natalie asking how best can companies/individuals clue themselves up on the real power of generative AI? Most businesses, certainly in financial services, still run some critical processes on Excel formulas. Is Gen AI possibly too big a leap from this? And a question from Bob. Having attended several seminars regarding AI and fintech, none seem to discuss the security implications of using AI. We at Cyber Alchemy are doing quite a bit of work around jailbreaking AI systems and how systems can be made more secure. At the moment, many of the systems seem to be quite vulnerable. How much attention are you giving to the security foundations of these AI platforms? And there was also another question there for James, talking about courses and lab sessions. So that might be one for you to answer individually, James. But yeah, any thoughts on any of those questions from our panel there? Or if you want to talk about the poll results, please engage with that.
Just an observation to start with on the poll. How advanced are you in your business progress in using AI in your everyday business operations? I think back to the last event that GFT ran with Google. What was ours, 2 or 3 months ago? And I think those numbers are shifting. I would say when we asked for a hand raise in the physical audience that we ran, there was one hand, maybe 2 hands coming up saying it was being used in the business every day, and we've got 11% now. So I think it shows already that the industry is moving towards adopting this. Do you agree?
I would say, yeah, it's definitely an interesting, interesting result. I would say, I mean, I think one of the things that's really that would be interesting to know is, in what areas are people using it? Where do they find it valuable? Because I think that's certainly something that's kind of interesting to be aware of from kind of a general audience like this. I think the other poll about is it delivering value? I mean, I think it limited value, that's I guess just over half, but very valuable to our business, that's 37%. I mean, that is actually a really interesting and a really exciting result that people are able to kind of build AI into their business, and they're actually getting good results out of it. So yeah, I think these are really exciting and interesting results. I guess it's AI in general rather than generative AI. So maybe if it was specifically generative AI, then the results might be slightly different. But yeah, certainly interesting.
And I think we're still, you mentioned it before, we're still early days, but technology behind generative AI and some of the algorithm and neural networks used are kind of evolving, and we're going to see new applications and new products as well coming from these not outbreaks, sorry, but from these new discoveries, basically, that might not be generative AI, but that will still use these models that we have created. And some people, I'm sure, will come, very smart people will come up with very innovative ideas and ways as well to use Gen AI. I saw as well for the question Bob Drake around security. I can't really talk about. I can only talk about what we do in HSBC, and I can tell you that we are putting a lot of attention on the security and on the jailbreaking and etc. And that is one of the reasons we are taking the time, and it's taking us some time as well to maybe have more products out there, because we want to test the prompts, like for example, prompt injections and all of these AI jailbreaking. We want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure the data as well that we're going to use with these models will stay inside our walls. They will not end up somewhere else where it shouldn't. Because I know it's happened, I think it was a year and a half ago, maybe, with the employees from a tech company who entered very sensitive and restricted code on the public version of ChatGPT to correct it. And yeah, now this code might be somewhere. So we are paying a lot of attention on this, and we are building it into our governance processes as well. So we might not talk about it a lot, but we are definitely doing it.
And I would add to that the Google approach to generative AI is similar to our other products. So GenApp Builder is similar to BigQuery in that it sits behind our firewalls and all of our other security policies that we have for the rest of our infrastructure. Data is encrypted in flight and at rest. And essentially, if you start using, as a customer, start using Gen AI, working with Vertex, whatever it may be, it all sits behind your the Google Cloud perimeter that is subject to your own security controls, that whatever you've asked us to implement for you, etc. So I don't perceive the use of generative AI from a Google perspective to necessarily increase your risk exposure when it comes to from a security perspective.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm in the midst of coughing and spluttering here, but in the demo that Paco did, there was this idea of like a dual LLM approach. So that means that there's not a direct interaction with the sensitive customer data that is held in that kind of back-end system of, you know, relating to that person's account. So, you know, there's ways of separating it off in a secure way, which, you know, we've been adopting for that work. I mean, it's not necessarily the only way of promoting security, but that's kind of one way that we've been looking at doing that.
You jumping in there, Ines?
Yeah, sorry, it was for a different question. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping to a different topic, but it was
please,
about,
please
because we had a couple questions, I think, around maybe awareness and education about generative AI. So how can best company and individuals clue themselves up? I will say companies should definitely incorporate some training, and all companies should do this, really, regardless of their domain of activities, just because it's so out there and so present. And make sure, especially, that people understand first the importance of data, what AI and generative AI can do, but also what it cannot do, or at least not yet. Just set expectations, because some people, they might hear, you know, read the newspaper and AI is our next overlord almost when we read some of these articles. So just straight the record, put the record straight and make sure that they understand what's doable, what isn't, because then they might have ideas and say, oh, I have a great idea for a use case. And then they might come to an expert and they'll be like, oh, actually, the technology is just not there yet at all. I'm really sorry, we can't do this. So have these training sessions. If you want to learn on your own as well, there's a lot of resources out there, very good quality resources, experts as well, who are publishing courses on all sorts of levels. So from very technical to more high level, if that's what you want. And maybe to be careful with the self-proclaimed experts, you could have a look at their past publications. If they never said anything about AI in their life before, and the profile doesn't match, and all of a sudden they are making great declarations about it, doesn't mean that they haven't learned, but you are allowed to, you know, be maybe a bit suspicious and take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually, you know, I think the more that we know and learn and are educated about, you know, about Gen AI or AI, then the more that we can distinguish between the hype or the nonsense and the actual true things that are being spoken. So yeah, I think that's also something I'd like to say. But yeah, in terms of training, there's a lot of training out there. So yeah, make use of it.
Yeah. I think you can even start with Coursera. There is a lot out there. You don't have to go on super fancy learning platforms. I know Google also has some little training pathways as well around Gen AI. So most cloud providers would, I think. So you can even start there.
I'm going to bring this discussion to a close shortly. We've not got to some of our questions. I did want to kind of get to some of them because they are really good ones. And Ines, you sort of touched upon it there. What won't Gen AI do for you? Thinking about helping people understand, the potential of this technology.
I think Gen AI can help you with a lot of things. However, if you're looking at having very novel and innovative ideas, it won't be able to come up with them. It will help you execute that vision, but these ideas will come from humans. I think that's quite an important one. Although generative AI is very good at producing content, most of the time, even if you use it for ideation and it's really good, these ideas will have been had by someone else before, and that's why they're in there. And generative AI will not be a sort of a one-stop shop solution for everything either, even though it sounds like it sometimes. That's not going to be the case at all.
Completely agree.
So final question from me, because I think it's nice to look ahead, obviously, at the future when it comes to these things. So if we were running this webinar again in a year's time, would we be discussing the same things? What would you like to be talking about? Is a year a long enough time scale at the minute? Things are moving quickly, but yeah, over to you guys. What are your thoughts?
I think a year is a very long time when it comes to AI and Gen AI. I think we're seeing iterations of our products and our technology coming out on a monthly basis. Every 6 weeks, there seems to be a new announcement, and so yeah, a significant change in the technology could be happening. But that's as much as I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a decent amount of time. I think we'd be discussing about how much it's matured. So, modularization, framework architectures, standard processes, things that are in place that are helping to, demonstrate that maturity. And I think on the flip side, it also, it kind of goes back to our previous discussion. I think people's understanding of what it can and can't do will be more sophisticated by then as well. I would think, I'd hope.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we would be talking about some brand new exciting developments around generative AI and maybe what transformers are the architecture underlying these models, but maybe new application, new models, a lot of new things. I'm sure we'll be hearing of more success stories as well by then, because people have been sort of warming up until then, wrapping their hands around what it is, putting in place the processes. Now, even the politicians obviously have been following and putting in place regulations, I think, fairly quickly when we think of maybe other technologies before. So now that everything is sort of falling into place, people will be able to start running soon.
I think that's a great note to end this discussion on. And I think we should get a date in the diary for a 2025 iteration of this webinar, selfishly speaking. Thank you so much to all of our panel, to James, to Alistair, to Ines, to Paco as well for running us through the demo. Most of all, thanks to our community for dialing in such great numbers and for asking some fantastic questions. Engagement, as ever, was really high on this webinar. So thanks to you for your involvement, and thanks obviously to GFT for their support as a partner, and Google Cloud as well. So our next steps will be to produce a write-up of today's webinar, which we'll share with our community. We'll share it across social media once we've let our speakers review that. So do keep an eye out on our channels for the write-up and the recording. And yeah, we'll hope to see you at a FinTech North event soon. Our next event is next week in Newcastle. So hopefully some of the people who've joined us on this call will be able to join us in person next week. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you for your time. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.